Let's see. All right, so it looks like we're live. We're good to go. All right, Klar, it's all you.
All right.
Just 1 second here. All right, thanks, everyone.
Hello, my name is Bracken Klar. I am an associate producer with Focus Black Oklahoma, and I'm also a member of Tri-City Collective. Today, our real talk is going to be over voting. Voting in general, why it matters, especially with a focus on local and state elections, barriers to voting, and how COVID-19 has exacerbated those barriers and sort of put in new barriers to people, between people in the ballot box as well. Before we get started, we're all where we are, but we usually do this at Woody Guthrie Center. And so it doesn't matter, no matter where we are. I think what I'm going to say will hold true for all of us. We acknowledge that we gather upon the lands of the Cherokee, Muskogee Creek, and Osage, but also the many Indian nations that called this their home in the generations before forced removal. We respect their hospitality and honor their histories. So now that I've introduced myself, let me introduce the two panelists we have currently. April Brooks, if you would wave so the folks know who you are. April Brooks is a Tri-City Collective member. She's an engaged community member and advocate dedicated to digital community building and leveraging social media to organize and educate on a variety of local and state issues. We also have Tina Baker. Tina, if you would wave. Tina is the North Carolina organizer for the Fight for Her campaign. The historic campaign's mission is to permanently repeal Trump's global gag rule, a policy that has had devastating effects on reproductive rights around the globe by defunding hospitals and medical facilities if they so much as mention the word abortion. She graduated from Atlanta's John Marshall Law School in 2017 and offers her legal expertise working as a consultant for attorneys, advocacy organizations, and grassroots political campaigns. She has run digital campaigns for important causes such as bringing awareness to an innocent man on death row, which has gained support from Kim Kardashian, John Legend, and attorney Bryan Stevenson. Now I have to find you guys again. There you are. All right. So first, let's talk about the system of voting. In Oklahoma, how does one register to vote?
Okay, well, first of all, if you're a first-time registering for the first time, you cannot do it online. That's kind of ridiculous. We're way behind the rest of the country on that. You have to download or get a printed form and take it directly to the election board or mail it into the election board. You can switch your party and change your address and things like that if you're still registered, but you have to register for the first time, or if they take you off the rolls because you haven't voted in, I think it's around 8 years, then you have to do that online as well. So it's not an easy process.
How does one find out where to register at?
I always recommend going straight to the Oklahoma Election Board website. That's where you're going to get the most absolutely correct information. There's lots of other places that give out partial information. I see social media posts all the time saying the last day to register to vote is so-and-so date, but they don't mention you have to do that with paper, and you can't just go and do it at 11:45 the night before. So go to the Oklahoma State Election Board is where I recommend people start for everything to vote locally. A national organization might miss stuff if you're going and plugging into something that is trying to help people get to vote, though they still won't be able to do it online for you. You have to do it by paper.
We've also seen media reports of campaigns targeted at minority communities that say, if you haven't registered now, it's too late, even though you have like a week and a half left, or the voting day is this Tuesday, or actually it would be the Tuesday after you're supposed to vote, so people will show up late. So yeah, the government website seems to be the best place to go for real information. Okay, so once you've registered to vote, how do you find out where you vote?
Once again, I'm going to point people straight to the Oklahoma State Election Board. They have something called okvoterportal.okelections.us. That will take you to your sample ballots, your polling place. It will give you a list of all of the districts that you're in. Every Oklahoma voter lives in multiple geographic districts that are all different, that all have different boundaries. And you're voting on some of them this time and some of them not this time. It's complicated. This part of it's not anyone's fault, though. Of course, someone in Tulsa is not going to be voting for the mayor of Guthrie or a school board election in Tulsa. And the state Senate districts are different from the federal Senate districts. So there's a lot to know. Democracy is really hard. It's a whole lot of work. But the Oklahoma State Election Board, once again, the okvoterportal.okelections.us will give you your polling place, your districts, your sample ballots, so you know exactly what's on your ballot. Your ballot will be different than your friend even across the way. If you live in one part of Oklahoma City, it will be different than another part of Oklahoma City. I think, how many counties are in Oklahoma City? Like 5 different counties are part of Oklahoma City. It's complicated.
Wow. I know when I lived in Gilcrease Hills, I was part of the city of Tulsa, but Osage County.
Exactly. I get that question all the time. People are like, wait, why can't I vote on this? That's just, it's absolutely dependent on your registered address. So you have to go to okvoterportal.okelections.us and look up your sample ballots.
And the history of why Gilcrease Hills is in the city of Tulsa, but Osage County is a conversation for another Real Talk.
Definitely a different Real Talk.
But so the OK voter portals, where you would go to get sample ballots and find out when elections are and stuff like that as well.
Yep. And it'll tell you your polling place. A little bit about polling places this year. I would encourage everyone in Oklahoma, this applies across the nation, I'm sure, but I pay attention locally. Lots of polling places are closed down because of COVID. Places just aren't comfortable having that many polling places open. Some places aren't open to the public still. So I know in Tulsa County a few weeks ago, they were saying that over 80 different polling places were going to be changed out of a little over 250. I think they've gotten that number down to around 30 different polling places that are changed, but that's still a whole lot of people that are going to be scrambling to figure out where they're going. A letter will be sent to you if your polling place is changed, but that's definitely an extra barrier this year. Plus, poll workers, there's a shortage of that because in Oklahoma, almost all of them are over, I think they said the average age, it's somewhere in your early 70s for the average age of a poll worker. And a lot of them are saying, I cannot put myself at this risk, especially since Oklahoma is not mandating masks or social distancing, even at the poll places this year. It's a scary year.
So 2 more questions for you, April, before we move on to a broader conversation. I don't want to keep Tina sitting there being bored too long.
Sorry, Tina.
No, it's important stuff. We got an election coming up June 30. Okay, so before we get into absentee balloting and what's officially happening and what's the official final word after the jostling back and forth and the whatevers, where does one go to find information on city, state, local elections? Like we can all find information on Inhofe and the federal people, but where do we go to find people running for local state senate, city council, judges?
It's a lot of research on your own for the most part. The League of Women Voters does a good job on the general elections, but for these smaller like primaries and primary runoffs and special elections and local stuff, it's going to be your local paper, maybe that one person that you know in Tulsa or whatever small town you're in that is really politically engaged. It takes legwork, unfortunately, on these smaller elections. That's why I recommend starting with your sample ballot. And honestly, a great place to start is looking on Facebook to see what a candidate has on social media. Your social media of your choice. They'll answer questions. If they're a good candidate, and you don't see something that you want to know about, send them a message. I wish I could say that here's where you go to find information about your city council and your school board, but it's just not that simple. And it's not particularly anyone's fault. Now that I've explained how all of the districts works, there's not one entity that would be able to be in charge of pulling all of that information together for everyone, if that makes sense.
That is sort of a good point you snuck in there. Like, if you reach out to a candidate while they're trying to get your vote and they won't answer you, like once they've already assumed office, what do you think the odds that they're going to respond to their constituents are?
Exactly.
All right, now the big sort of, I think, the last question, that's I think the most, well, not the most interesting, but it's got a lot of like behind the scenes and back and forth in the legislature. How does one vote absentee in Oklahoma this year, and or on the June 30th election, because it might change after that even?
That is true. It might change again. So first of all, the last day to request an absentee ballot, which simply means voting by mail, is the 23rd at 5 p.m. I think. That can be done online, and you'll get your ballots in the mail. Filling out your ballots and mailing them back in is rather complicated. We'll put up a list of resources tomorrow. I'm not going to lie, y'all, I'm a little distracted about Trump being in my town, so I have not pulled that together yet, but I promise I will pull together a nice list of places that and dates for you tomorrow. But you can do that online. You'll get your sample ballot. Oklahoma has very strict rules about turning in your absentee ballot, though. Most places just let you turn it back in. We have required a notary for ours. You have to get your ballot notarized. Now, during the pandemic, the Supreme Court ruled that that was not going to be a requirement because obviously we're trying to protect ourselves from the pandemic and we want to avoid each other as much as possible right now. But the state legislature decided to, it was Senate Bill 1779, I think they reinstated the requirement to have a notary, and then they added on something that has honestly just made it more confusing. Or, so you have to have it notarized, or you can turn in a copy of your ID, a photocopy of your state license or your voter ID card. I have a video that a friend made on exactly how to put all of that stuff together and mail it, because there's several envelopes and the questions about how to attach your photocopy are confusing. I could just keep talking about this forever, y'all. I'm gonna shut up. It's complicated. It's complicated.
So when you say you'll post it online, where will you post it?
I'll post it on the Tri-City Collective. I'll make a note, a nice looking note with links.
Awesome. Okay. So, Tina, what are some of the barriers that typically people find when they're trying to vote? What are some of the historic and that either historic barriers that we've overcome, that we've beaten down a little bit, that we've pushed on? What are some of the obstacles in the way that people find on the way to the ballot box?
Well, first, I just want to thank you so much for allowing me to be here and speak, even though I'm not in Oklahoma. Oklahoma is a state very near and dear to my heart. I have a lot of friends there that I really care about. But I also wanted to address something really quickly, like what April was talking about. It's important, it's so important to know where to go to register to vote, all of the rules. And it's so important to go and research that on your own and not just, we are all big on social media now. Even older people like my parents have gotten into social media. And sometimes that's where we get a lot of our news, but that can be very tricky. There are a lot of sites and organizations out there who are, that is their goal, is to trick you or give you false information around voting. So like April was saying, go to the website, do the research on your own. And I'm going to charge you a step further, the audience out there, to not just do that, but get your friends together too. Get your family members. I'm a state organizer of a national campaign, the Fight for Her campaign, based in DC. And I'm out in the community. I organize around the issue of global reproductive rights. But me being an organizer and being a professional organizer, those are the skills and tactics I learned in my community, but you can use them too. Organize amongst your friends, your families, relational organizing is what wins elections. So see where they are on the issues, what matters to them, speak to those specific issues that matter to them, and urge them to go vote. Even if you got to give them a ride to the polls, like organize amongst your friends, because that is what's going to win elections. And you saw Black women did it in Georgia for Stacey Abrams, my home state. They did it there and it works. So I want to speak to that first. As far as barriers to vote, like we just mentioned, false information that is out there. People also feel personally that their vote doesn't matter, their vote doesn't count, when in fact it does. There have been studies to show that, issues like a fair minimum wage, that's an issue that goes across party lines. There are a lot of Democrats that support that, of course, and there are a lot of Republicans that support that. But why hasn't Congress acted on it? It's because they pay those people who are affected by, first of all, you have big business that lobbies against a fair minimum wage. We know that. But there are also whole blocks of people that don't vote and their voices aren't being heard. People that are affected by low to minimum wages, people of color, particularly people that are in poor situations, poor lower economic classes, they just don't vote. And then in some instances, younger people. But another thing, there are contemporary policies, of course, that have been put in place to suppress the minority vote in particular. Policies like voter identification laws that, are still having a huge impact as far as barriers to voting, cuts to early voting, and of course, felony disenfranchisement, which a lot of minority people are affected by that in huge numbers. And gerrymandering, of course, there are a few. So knowing this, so many of us are prevented from voting because of policies like this, is all the more reason for us to get out there and vote. And if we gotta wait in long lines, if we gotta wait in the rain, like I had friends in the rain in Georgia waiting to vote, policies like that are all the more reason why we need to vote. And not just in presidential elections, like so many people want to pay attention to presidential elections, the state and local, just as important. Like we look at the reasons why the officer was, got away with killing Mike Brown in Ferguson, for example. What's happening in Georgia with the police murder of Rashard Brooks. Like, people are wondering how these things are allowed to happen and have been happening so long. It's because police regulations. Darren Wilson was, he was ruled that he followed the police regs. What was in the police regs? Well, who writes the police regs? So we need to look at, local city council, who's running there. Go to your city council meetings, see what they think, see what their ideologies is, see if they line up with your values and what you need for your community. And if they don't, like April said, reach out to them on Facebook, go to their events. It's time for us to be aware and alert and woke. And I think we're doing that with what's going on now. We've been shut in for months. We're getting stir crazy. And then you add, the police murder, of George Floyd, and then what happened in Atlanta. It's very, as being a Black woman and especially a Black mother, it's been very hard to watch what's going on, but it is a movement towards change. A lot of people are waking up, even conservative friends of mine, they're waking up. And now is the time to take that momentum and do what we got to do and get to the polls.
Yeah, that's a point that I see a lot of people making from across the political spectrum, from across the religious spectrums, like people from all over. It's not Black versus white or liberal versus conservative. It's all of us versus racists.
Right.
Like, that's it. Like, it doesn't matter. We're taking all comers. Like, as long as you're not a racist, or as long as you're willing to fight racism with us, let's do this together. We'll figure the other stuff out later. We should all be able to agree that racism is bad. So so here's an opportunity coming up on June 30th in Oklahoma, where we can do something about that. So, like you said, voting is important because it affects not just the things you think about, like who's in the president's, who's your mayor. It affects policy. Sean King is a guy who's got a whole campaign for electing attorneys general or prosecutors, right? So that's another reason a lot of police officers get away with murdering citizens, is because prosecutors refuse to prosecute those cases. So if you pay attention and you do your research and you find some good like attorneys general or prosecutors, we can vote those people into office.
Yeah, prosecutors are the most powerful players really in the criminal justice system. I actually prosecuted my last year of law school, and I got to see a lot behind the scenes of how they think. They can decide, yes, I want to give this person a second chance. They deserve a second chance. And I can't tell you the number of times I've seen men, particularly Black men, go to jail or get long sentences or, you know, being taken away from their families for something that could have definitely been a different route. You know, there could have been a different punishment for that. And it's really, I think prosecutors, yes, definitely attorney generals, district attorneys, very important. Also, Secretary of State, because in Georgia, we saw how Brian Kemp stole that election from Stacey Abrams, because Brian Kemp was the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State runs the election. So we need good people in the Secretary of State position, people that we can hold accountable. Brian Kemp refused to give up his position. So not only was he running for governor of Georgia, but he was managing the election. So we heard afterwards about reports about tons of voting machines locked up in warehouses wrapped in plastic and then there ended up being voting shortages of machines at certain polling places, mainly in minority communities. And of course, 50,000 or so minorities purged from voting rolls. So Secretary of State is also an important position to make sure you vote for.
So it's also like like April said, democracy is hard. It takes a lot of work. And there's questions for everybody. Once a person is elected, whether you voted for that person or not, it's important to contact them. Like if you want a person to vote a certain way, and they've got to be able to go to the Senate floor, the congressional floor, the House floor, and say like, I have like letters from my constituents, or I have notices from my constituents saying this is bad. So when someone says, this is just your personal campaign or your personal attack, they can say, no, like it's not. And also, yeah, so how important is talking and sort of not maintaining regular communication, but staying up with your representatives and how they voted on things and contacting them? How important is that in the local and in state and versus federal? Like, what are the different levels that your direct impact can have on those different levels of like elected official?
Well, I mean, I can talk about the insane one that's happening to me right now. I've been bothering my mayor intensely and encouraging everyone to try to get him to stop Trump from coming to my city right now, because I personally know that he has the authority to do that with the stroke of a pen, and he could have done it from a public health standpoint without being political. He could have simply used his local control, which is a GOP talking point that he has, to update his civil emergency order and say, I'm sorry, it's just not safe to have 19,000 people gather. We're going to put a capacity limit at like 3,000 people or something like that. He absolutely had a chance to do that. Still has the power, quite frankly. I know he won't now, but that's a very good example of how important it is to know who. It's partly about a who's who of accountability. You have to know who has the authority to do what, and that is hard. That's something that we all need to get better at doing. Tina, you were talking about the what happened with Brian Kemp. That's a great example. Most people have no idea that he would have had that authority to be running for the election that he was controlling. That doesn't make sense. And so I personally think that I honestly don't pay that much attention to the federal stuff. It's so easy to hear about what's going on in Congress and the Senate and Mitch McConnell and all of that. It's very easy to miss what's going on with the Brian Kemps or your local mayor or something like that. I always tell people, like, just focus your attention productively on local action, and you will be able to make massive, massive changes.
JB, I want to give you a chance to hop in. I know you've got some good stuff to say about voting.
Yeah, I mean, I think what they both said was on point to how I feel and most people feel. I know a lot of the reasons why people don't vote because they think that that you know, once the once you get our vote and you get into your position, whether it be local, national, federal, whatever, once you get into that position and you have our vote, then a lot of the things that apply to us, they get abandoned, you know, and so, you know, it's hard to encourage people to vote whenever they feel like that and they feel like it's hopeless and we're sitting in 2020 and you know we're looking at, you know, the way we're looking at how the country's been ran, and we look at, you know, that one more year, one more election where a president didn't win, you know, the didn't win but is in office, you know what I mean? So it's definitely hard. And so then we say, well, you got to vote locally, and you got to, you know, make sure you know who you're voting for, you know, in your state, because those people determine, you know, the those votes as well. And it's like, you know, it's like, okay, well, those people never come. I help with a city council election. I live in Ward 7, which is the east side of Oklahoma City. The predominantly Black ward, and I helped, you know, and you know, just kind of push for people to vote for her. But you know, I had, for me, it was personal. You know, she was a Black woman from the east side, and there was a white man who wanted to have that seat, and I thought that was wrong. And for many reasons, even after I talked to him and sat down and talked to him, he legit told me that he felt like he could do a better job because he was white and he was a male. You know what I'm saying? Um, so I think that, you know, whenever we're faced with those, and I had Black people calling me telling me to lay off of them. You know what I'm saying? So I think that whenever you have people who have, you know, been let down for generations and generations, it's hard to encourage them to get out and vote whenever, you know, even whenever they do go out and vote, everything that you know they were promised, or that, you know, those people told them they would take care of, they get abandoned, and it's never taken care of. Um so I just think we have to really press those people who are in office to be bold and live up to what they say they're going to do, and you know, and find people, you know, random people who we do believe in to try and run, you know. I think that, you know, the people they set these positions up to where, you know, whether it's a mayor, whether it's a council person, they set them up so the mayor only makes so much money, that because you know, if a mayor is making, you know, 12,000 a year, then we know somebody who lives like me can afford to live like that. But they know somebody who has money coming in from oil and gas or family or something like that, on, you know what I'm saying, in other ways, they can afford to live, like they can afford to, you know, take $12,000 a year or whatever, and get money other ways, you know. But it's set up so that they can do it. It's not set up for us. But we have to, you know, start raising people up um, who are radical and bold and don't care about none of that, and you know, be willing to take the L and do what it takes, regardless of you know, any of that other stuff. Because until we do that, we're going to keep seeing the same kind of people hold the same kind of positions, because that's what it's set up for.
So when 4 years ago, when it was the federal election, Hillary versus Donald Trump, um, several arguments were made against the Democrats in general, that you only come to communities of color every 4 years, and you press palms, you kiss babies, and we don't see you again for 4 years. How do communities of color leverage the support that they give the support that is needed from candidates from communities of color, how do they leverage that and make sure that once elected officials are in office, they remain aware of the community's needs and wants, so that it's not just like, I'm stopping by this 4 years almost to dare you not to vote for me. How do communities keep in contact with their elected officials to make sure they're doing what they've promised to do, or have a pipeline to that community?
I mean, I think there's a bunch of ways. You know, what you said is what I told that man who was trying to run for city council. I said, man, if you really is who you say you is, once you lose, because you're gonna lose, once you lose, you should still be around for 4 years. You know what I'm saying? You should still be everything you say you want to do, all the stuff you say you do, you feel about the community, you just still be here. I ain't seen him since. You know what I'm saying? He lost and got ghost. You know what I mean? So like, but at the same time, like, we know that's gonna happen, and we know, you know, it's just like putting out music. People trying to sell an album, you know what I'm saying? They make an album every 4 years and they try to sell it, you know, and then they don't talk to you again till it's time to sell another album. So like, yeah, we know that that's what it is. So we got to stop listening to their music. We got to stop supporting their music and buying their music. You know what I'm saying? I'm using music as an example, but we have to start, you know, like, calling these people out and not just saying, well, they politicians, that's what they do. No, man, forget it. If that's the case, then okay, let's raise up somebody else who we see every day, who don't have who live and die where I live and die at. You know what I'm saying? Like, we have to raise people up like that. Like, we're forgetting, and I think a lot of times because we've been conditioned to think this way, because this is how the country has been ran, is that like, man, like, there's no rules to this. You know what I'm saying? Like, we can do it. You know what I mean? Like, look, Trump did it. Ain't that let you know it ain't no rules to this? You know what I'm saying? Like, he did everything. He did everything every young little kid in America said they were gonna do. You know what I'm saying? And he did it. You know what I mean? He did it by being radical and not caring. You know what I'm saying? So like that's how we live every day. You know what I mean? So there are people out there that we can raise up and push and say, listen, man, like, you know, you don't got no felonies, you don't got this, you don't got this. It needs to be you. You know what I mean? And they can push the agenda of the people and put the people first, and then not be about, you know, money and elections and, you know, all that stuff that we're so conditioned to think that politics are about. You know what I mean? That's why people don't like it, because we're used to being lied to, and we know it's not real. It's fake. So yeah, like, we got to stop playing this music and letting them kiss our babies and letting them come to our hoods and take pictures and talking to them. Like, I'm not going to talk to you about nothing that going with me in my hood if you never been there. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? Like, if you never spend time there, you don't got nothing to say to you. You're not going to take a picture with my child. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care about that, you know? So like, we got to stop doing that stuff and letting them slide. Cause once they get that picture, they trying to go to the next person and get a picture for whatever other reason, you know? And we got to stop living like that and letting people do that and take advantage of us. And if that means, and we forget that, you know, we live in an age of, I don't know if you forget it, but I feel like we live in an age where, you know, the media thrives on and is led by stuff on social media. So like, social media is a heavy tool. If a person says something to you or says something to a group of people they planned on doing, like for instance, me, where I'm from, if any of the politicians or anybody say anything to me about what I'm doing or what they can do for me and my community, you best believe, like, if I don't hear from them, they're gonna hear from me. You know what I'm saying? And I'm gonna be so loud they can't ignore me. You know what I'm saying? They're gonna have to come find me. You know
So
what I
it
mean?
sounds like we're all sort of agreeing that, or rather, the panel here is sort of agreeing that, like, remaining in contact with people once they get in office is important.
Very.
What's the best success you guys have found there, and how do we make sure people, again, looking at the barriers to voting, like, we know that people of color, communities of color, and economically disadvantaged communities don't turn out as often as more affluent, and the young don't as well. how do we, social media is a powerful tool, but there are communities that don't have access to the internet. How do we get that kind of equity involved? And COVID-19's made it even harder. Like, you can't go to libraries anymore to use their internet. You can't go to school to use the internet anymore. Some schools have hotspots, which has been awesome, but many don't have enough. How do we spread that sort of like ability? Like, even if you have the desire to stay in contact and you can't afford the internet, how do we spread that equity net that way?
You talking to me, everybody?
I was talking, I guess Tina took her mute off. I was going to see what she had to say.
Well, I just think, super grassroots. We saw it with the Obama campaign, and I know COVID is an issue now, but with the Obama campaign, it was really one of the first of its kind where it was such a super grassroots organization. A campaign where you saw people really invested because he was authentic and he was someone that they could, get behind because of his message. No one had really heard, Black men like, coming up and talking like this. And he had the track record to prove it because, at one point he was a community organizer. And even if you take it even a step further, you talk about not having the internet and social media. Fannie Lou Hamer from Mississippi, prime example. I mean, even though she didn't win public office, she organized in her community. She was a poor Black woman from the Delta region of Mississippi, didn't even have education, but she made a huge impact because her message was so in your face. It was something that everyone could identify with. And that's where you're gonna have to start with, what do people care about? Meeting them at where their motivations are, what motivates them, and then getting out there in your community and showing your face. And even in Oklahoma City, a good example of that now is Jimmy Lawson, who is the best friend of Julius Jones, who's on death row right now. Jimmy's always out in the community doing a march or some kind of event, speaking. He does an amazing job at that, at connecting with people. So even in the face of, COVID-19, I just think being in your community, like JB mentioned, being out there, knocking on doors, talking to people, even when, an election is not at stake, just being out there and energizing and motivating your community to act, I think is the way to go.
So I know a lot of, we're going to say something, April, if you were heading towards the mic.
I was going to jump in just 1 second. JB mentioned that we need to bring people from the grassroots into office too. A lot of people have no idea what it takes to run for office. To run for mayor in Tulsa, it's $50 in a form. That's it. There's no requirements. It's just $50 in a form. Anybody can run. And it's like that for, at least in Oklahoma, for all of the local races too, like the Oklahoma legislature. It's just a small filing fee and a form. Now, we do have to, that means we do, if we want people who are not oil and gas people like JB was talking about, or don't just have their own money, we have to do the community organizing that Tina is talking about to find people to fundraise and show a candidate that they will have our support to campaign and knock on doors and do the work to get people that are part of our communities that live and die with us, like JB said, into office. It's absolutely possible right now to do so. It absolutely is. We had an example of that in Bracken. You helped get Allison Ikley Freeman elected. She won by 68 votes in a super, super, super conservative district. And she is not someone that a conservative group would normally. We'll just leave it there. She's the
first openly gay woman elected to the state house, and she's also married to a Black woman. So she had she beat a lot of odds, and she, through grassroots organizing, through people that believed in her and her message, she lives in Sand Springs, or between Sand Springs and Tulsa. Like, she's come from here, she taught here. Yeah, she was part of the community, and that sort of like grassroots connection really helped her campaign. All right. I guess your silence means you're ready to move on. Since I think this is an important topic, like when we're talking about like the teacher strike, one of the big arguments levied was that, you know, the legislature was voting themselves a raise at the same time they were voting teachers like nothing. So it was a great comparison, right? Like, if you deserve a raise, so do teachers. But it's also an unfair comparison. Not that teachers don't deserve the raise, because teachers 100% deserve way more than they're getting. But like to JB's point, if we want people in office that are working class, that are middle class, that are single parents, that would have to consider childcare or whatever, we've got to do something. We've got to raise what we pay these people so they can afford to be out of work for 3 months at a time, or, you know, a session at a time, whatever the term is in whatever office. What does that look like, guys? Like, how does democracy get there?
You know, I think there's a bunch of different ways to, like, it's like, for instance, with the teachers not being paid enough. There's so many people in positions that are getting hella big salaries just to have a title, the assistant director, so, you know what I'm saying, like all these random titles, and they don't do anything, you know what I'm saying? And they aren't, you know, for instance, they're making decisions about places they don't even go, or no, you know what I mean? Like, so I think that, you know, we need to start, if it's whatever, we just trying to figure out where money goes. Let's start putting money in the hands of people who are actually working and doing stuff, and not the people who sit behind desks and they just have a title, and, you know, all they do is take lunches with people and have meetings. You know what I'm saying? Like, people who people who do less work often make more than people who work the hardest, you know. And I just think that, like, people need to start taking cuts, you know. People need to start getting paid less, you know. And I think that if we understand, like, you know, where the work is being done and who's doing the work, then it's a no-brainer. That's not something that you even need to think about. You know what I mean?
Accountability, it sounds like, is what you're talking about, JB. We need to hold people accountable at all levels for what they're doing. Also,
Yeah.
you didn't introduce JB. Bracken, tell us who JB is.
Okay, let me find my notes again. I know JB is a rapper from Oklahoma City, but I forget all the awards he's won because, oh my God, it's daunting. Okay, here we go. Everybody. JB is a rapper from Oklahoma City whose music, according to Chuck D, who is from Public Enemy, BTW to all you younger people, has the potential to change the world. His latest album was released in 2016 and it reached number 25 on iTunes, and it features Chuck D on one of the tracks. JB has toured with Run the Jewels, which is Killer Mike and LP. Killer Mike has a show called Trigger Warning. He's also toured with Murs and has been featured on Sway, In the Morning, MTV, Double XL, Complex, The Source, and Vibe. JB received the Oklahoma Gazette's Woody Award for Best Hip Hop in 2007 and 2009, the Oklahoma Street Music Award for Album of the Year in 2009 and 2010. Was recognized by Herb Magazine as an artist to watch in 2014, and JB has collaborated with Oklahoma City-based marketing agency Funnel Design Group to create What If, a television commercial promoting the Science Museum Oklahoma. The video won an Emmy for commercial writing and performance. So that's who JB is, everybody. Welcome, JB.
And you've been doing organizing around voting in Oklahoma City for a while too, JB, right? Like, you've had some big events a couple of years ago, getting people registered.
Yes, ma'am. I'm working on a couple more too. And, you know, I don't know. We all do stuff, you know. But yeah, if there's something to be done, you know, I'm trying to do it.
So you're talking about sort of accountability and where money goes. I think that sort of brings up the argument of the dismantling white supremacy. Dismantling white supremacy means redistribution, period, right? Whether it's power or positions, money, like shopping at Black businesses, promoting Black employees, it means redistribution. So how do we bring the dismantling of white supremacy to the ballot box? And then how do we use our votes to dismantle white supremacy in the legislature to then continue the dismantling of white supremacy through policy?
Is that for me?
I'm leaving it open to anybody. This is a genuine question that I don't have the answer to.
Tina, I think you've done the most organizing.
I think what it comes down to is what we've been saying all along, like who's running for public office. You know, it's really time for more minorities, of course, to step up and run for public office. And I get it, running for public office can be very intimidating because it puts you on the spot. But what we've seen time and time again is people who, you know, like I mentioned, Fannie Lou Hamer, you know, don't have like the law degrees and the college degrees, but just a genuine care for the communities that they live in and want to see things better for their children. And I think at the very least, that's all it takes. Me being a mom, I have a stake in the education system. I have a stake in, you know, reproductive justice issues that center around me being able to raise my children in an environment where I don't have to fear them being killed by police, you know, victims of police brutality. And I think, you know, people like me and in my position and people who have a stake in their own communities, it's very important. Like that's where we start, essentially. I helped on the campaign through Move On, which is an organization that works to get progressive candidates elected through donating for Lucy McBath in the 6th district of Georgia. And that 6th district is very much Republican. It was Newt Gingrich's old district and it had been a Republican stronghold for 30 so years. And Lucy McBath came in as a Black woman running against Karen Handel, who was a previous Secretary of State, who wasn't listening to her constituents, who just wasn't doing a good job, you know, was concerned about big money and taking money from big corporations, because that's, you know, essentially, anyway, I'm not going to go into that right here. But Lucy McBath had a genuine concern about gun control. Her son, Jordan, was killed in Florida. I don't know if you all remember the gas station shooting where the music was too loud and the man shot up her son's car, his friend's car, and her son was killed. And that passion that she has for gun control and ensuring that, you know, we all grow up safe and, you know, led her to run for public office. And she ended up defeating Karen Handel running on gun control and is in DC doing an amazing job. So I think if we find people who have a genuine stake and care, you know, what's going on in the community, that's a good place to start. And then secondly, us coming together as a community, including white people, and rallying around these candidates and supporting them in whatever way they need. A lot of times they may need some help putting together the policy, understanding the policy, you know, and writing speeches or, you know, raising money, whatever way you can get in and fit in and offer that help to these minority campaigns, I think is a good place to start.
So you guys have said a couple of things that bring this next question up. Like, obviously the easy parts about white power that we can understand with our heads are we need to dismantle and redistribute power. We need to redistribute, geographically redistribute. All these things are sort of easy to get, but the several things you guys have said have brought this question up. How important is the redistribution of wealth to dismantling the entrenched white supremacy system?
Well, I mean, part of what we all keep saying is, I think we need to expand our idea of what a politician looks like. America has a very narrow idea of what a politician can be right now. It's expanded a little bit in the past 4 years, but we can do so much better and make it so much broader. And that is going to be key. And that will, once we can get it out of our heads that power looks like a white male, we're going to change the world, because so many new things will open up. Women will bring new policy ideas, and we'll definitely start distributing things. Sorry, it's been a long week, y'all. I've been fighting trying to get Trump to come to my town. I'm tired. But you know what I'm saying? Like, if we can expand that idea of what power looks like at the root, I think that can make a huge, massive change. Somebody else jump in now.
Yeah, man, I think that white supremacy is I think that it's bigger than just money. I think that it's a you know, it's a state of mind. You know, it's a lifestyle for some people, and I think that it stretches, you know, so far. I think that yeah, you know, I don't remember how you put it, redistributing the money or whatever. I don't remember how you put that, but I think even you know, you can give a black community all the money in the world and um white people will figure out a way to take it from them. You know what I'm saying? White people will figure out a way to destroy that community. You know what I mean? Like we've seen it done so many times. So I think that the white supremacy is such a deep rooted fabric of our country that goes back since the beginning of time. Like it it's something that you know I don't
It's so pervasive, it's hard to talk about.
yeah this dismantling it like this dismantling white supremacy would mean like you know like dismantling and redeveloping an entire country. You know what I mean? Because that's like it's in the DNA of this country. You know how it's built. White supremacy is so big that even the it's so prominent and big that even the idea of somebody saying, you know, how do we dismantle white supremacy can be seen as racist. You know what I mean? Like, you know, you like that's not a financial thing. That's a mentality thing. Like there's no amount of money that can fix somebody's mind. You know what I mean? Like you just have to like, you know, do what black people been doing our entire lives is trying to operate in it and navigate in it, you know, and hope that, you know, whenever we do encounter, you know, wealth or whatever, that we can, you know, live peacefully without, you know, some form of white supremacy trying to destroy us because of it. I was watching a documentary on Billie Holiday the other day, and it's called Billie. But anyways, they were talking about how, you know, she was an addict and, you know, they sicked the FBI on her several times. And they said that, you know, they don't usually, we never, and these are people who, all the interviews done in this interview are people who was done in the 70s. So everybody in this interview either knew her and encountered her, you know, and down to the FBI agents, they're not even with us anymore, you know? And so, they were talking to the FBI agent and he said that we never even deal with addicts, you know, people who are addicts. But she had a nice car. She walked around with fur on. So we, you know what I'm saying? So we arrested her. And like you think about that today, like you know, how many you know, black athletes who have money, how many, you know, black people who have money, and the fact, and just that fact that they're black and they, you know, they live a lifestyle of wealth, they become targets of white supremacy. You know what I mean? So like, you know, it like redistributing money, you know, to me in my eyes will only, you know, make somebody, a black community or a black person, more of a threat to white supremacy, which means that, you know, either they won't have that money for long, or you know, they'll figure out some way to shut it down, or you know, you gotta bring the baby so they can kiss them for the pictures. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know, man. White supremacy is depressing to talk about for me, and it's frustrating. I've been talking about it every single day, I feel like, for the last couple of weeks, and I don't know. I
That
still
brings
don't
up
have
a
all.
good point. Like for you people, not April, because April's in Tulsa. For the folks that are outside of Tulsa, what does it look like to you guys? Like, how does Tulsa look in through your eyes right now? Like, how do you guys perceive what's going on with like our mayor, Trump coming, Juneteenth? Like, how does Tulsa look from the outside perspective? Like, I think April and I, we're both lifelong Tulsans. We're fish in water. We can't see the water, but you guys can. Like, what does Tulsa look like to you guys?
I feel like for anybody, for anybody Black, we feel like we in Tulsa. You know what I'm saying? I'm only a few hours away. I had to stay in Oklahoma City because not even a few hours, an hour and a half. I was going to go to Tulsa until he changed the date, and I had other things I had planned here for Juneteenth that we plan every single year that we've been doing since the day I was born. But so I stayed to see those things through. But I had friends and family who went up there. But it's for most of us, we wish we could be there, for many reasons, but I think that, for anybody Black, we just feel like it's harassment. We feel like it's a harassment. We feel like it's bad sportsmanship. We feel like they're dancing on the graves. We know that white supremacy, the Ku Klux Klan, they all follow Trump wherever he goes. So, to bring that environment, that energy, those people here on this weekend to Tulsa, right by Greenwood is to me a declaration of war against Black people. And I think that we have to look at it like that, because that's what he's doing, and that's what they're doing. They're trying to call checkmate on a whole entire race of people, and that's unfair. And I think that it's very shameful that the mayor and the governor there just sat down and allowed it to happen. Even with COVID, I think that and then you add COVID on top of that. You have people coming from all over the country, to be there for this, and it's dangerous for so many reasons. And it's obvious that they care more about being reelected than they do people's lives, and that's not how you lead a country. You know what I mean? Like that's how children act. You know what I mean? Like that's how children act. And it's just sad that that somebody can do that, and you have a whole group of people who have no choice in the matter. And and I think that if anything happens, I think that if there is any COVID cases, deaths, any bloodshed, anything, it's on his hands. And we need to hold them accountable for it. It's on his hands. It's on the governor's hands. It's on the mayor's hands, and they need to be held accountable for that.
Yeah, I'm not surprised at anything. I was a bit taken aback, because I know the history, of Oklahoma and the civil unrest that have taken place there. I just found out, though, probably a couple of weeks, maybe a week or so ago, from Bailey Perkins, who works in politics in Oklahoma City. She mentioned, she came and spoke to some of my fellows at this fellowship program I'm running, and she mentioned that Oklahoma has like the largest number of like Black founded towns.
Yep.
And I didn't know that. And that really struck a chord with me, in the fact that he would choose that. And but it's something for me. I think Trump is very strategic, even in this so-called, police reform bill that he was supposedly signing. Like, he's very strategic in what he does, and he knows how to pander to his base. He counts on them being ignorant, and a lot of them show themselves as ignorant. Even my mom voted for Trump and is a very staunch Trump supporter, and I can listen to some of the things she say, and I'm like, I get it. You got it. I can't even argue with any Trump supporter, and I will refuse to. My focus has been on organizing my base, making sure that my friends and my circle and my people have a voting plan in place, that they have checked and make sure that their names have not been purged from voting rolls, because that tends to happen, and to just get ready for what's to come, because it's going to be a fight. He's already Trump is already speaking of some magical special emergency powers that he has. And I think he's going to use that to wreck this 2020 election. So I think for us, let him do what he do. Let him show his butt, because that's exactly what he's doing. We know his script. Let's get over here and get ready, to challenge whatever happens during the 2020 elections, because he's going to put a monkey wrench in things. He is definitely planning that.
All right. Well, I think that's about it, guys. We're about out of time. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Our next Real Talk is going to be on the 18th of July at 2 p.m. and the topic will be education, with a focus on COVID-19's impact on the students and the system of education. Sponsors for the Real Talk, this one and the next one, and most of the ones that have happened, are the Tulsa Artists Coalition, the Woody Guthrie Center, Folk Alliance International, and the Tri-City Collective. Tulsa's Juneteenth will be going live at 6 p.m. at tulsablockparty.com. So tune in there if you want to check out what's going on in historic Greenwood, Tulsa for our Juneteenth festival. But thanks, Trina. I'm sorry, my sister's name is Katrina. Thanks, Tina. Thanks, JB. Thanks, April. I appreciate you all. Appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me here.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, sir.
Bye, Bracken.
Bye, April.